Welcome back, guys, to the Futbal Biz podcast. As always, I'm Graysen Mortimer. He is Hunter Boyven, and there have been a lot of transfers that have happened this last couple weeks. That is going to be what we talk about mostly today, so stay tuned for that. So to start us off here, we're going to go down the list of a lot of big signings that have happened, and we're going to start with. But before we get to that, we're going to start with a legend has retired, and that legend is Cesc Fabregas. Personally, I believe that he was one of the most underrated players to ever play the game. His passing was immaculate. He could score. He was in that dominant Barcelona team with Messi and the likes of Busquets, Iniesta, Xavi, and he was still starting games for them. Cesc is an absolute legend. Played for Arsenal, Chelsea, Monaco, as well as some other teams. And frankly, he's a guy that didn't get a ton of recognition where he probably should have, but he's had a great career. He won just about everything that he possibly could. And congrats on a great career, Cesc.
Yeah, basically all of that you said. I think in my conscious mind, when I started watching the sport, I really paid attention when he was at Arsenal. So that was like one of the first things I remember about him. Obviously, it's been a long time since then. But much like you said, a fantastic passer, reminding you of players like Ozil and whatnot. And I think, like you said, just underrated player, deserves to get his flowers today. But yeah, congratulations on a great career.
Absolutely. Very happy for him in that regard. But now, let's get to some signings here. We're going to start with your team, FC Bayern. They made two big transfers so far this offseason. The first one being Korean center back Kim Min Jae from Napoli, who has really risen to prominence in the last couple of years. And the other one being Rafael Guerrero. So, since it's your team, I'll let you talk about these ones. How are you feeling about both of these guys?
I'm very excited. I think the prospect of this defense is growing on me. It seems like they're really strengthening it, and it can go either way. With one thing that we're going to talk about later is one of the rumors is that Alphonso Davies may be leaving. So if that's the case, then that's a spot that Guerrero could fill as best as he can. He's a great passer. He's a great assister. I think he had the most assists last season
He did.
uh, for Dortmund. So that's obviously a great thing to bring to the team, especially that far down on the wing. And with Kim and Jay, he was easily one of the best defenders in the Serie A this year. Um, eh, Crucial to the success of Napoli, winning a title for the first time in so long. They It would have been tough to do it without him, so he was very important. To see him leave so soon is actually pretty surprising, but of course, on my end, I'm not going to complain about that. And I think the partnership between him and De Ligt is going to be one that will be tough for anyone in Europe, not just the Bundesliga, anyone in Europe to get past. That's going to be really difficult. And whether or not they do three, four, or five at the back, I could see this going either way, no matter how Tuchel decides to formulate this team. I think it's going to be very good.
Yeah, for sure. Upamecano has got to be, shaking his head right now, being like, I know I played really bad, but this is how I'm getting repaid. He's not going to get in this team easily. He's going to
Unless they do
struggle.
five at the back, that's it. That's
Yeah.
really
Well, even if they play five at the back, I mean, if Davies doesn't leave, you could play Guerrero as the left-sided center back
yeah.
and then play the other two and middle and right respectively. And then you obviously got the likes of Pavard are still there, and also Mazraoui, the left back from Morocco. So there's options here. I mean, there's a lot that Bayern can do with this defense. Uh, but I personally like both of these signings. I'm going to give Kim Min Jae a 9. I think that he's a signing that Bayern really needed to do. And yeah, as you said, it was very fast. I was not expecting him to leave Napoli as soon, but I think he did the right thing. I think he did what Koulibaly should have done 5 years ago, which was have a couple great seasons and then take your step up. But instead, Koulibaly went to Chelsea for 1 year, sucked, and now he's in Saudi Arabia. So I think Kim Min Jae has taken a much better approach to advancing his career than Koulibaly did. And honestly, I'm really happy for him because South Korea is growing as a football nation. Son Heung-min has been their guy for years, but with this signing, I think it proves that Korea's not gonna just be Sonny's team now. I think there's other guys that can step into this role and really kind of take over for Sonny since he is starting to get up there in age. As for Guerrero, I'm going to give him about a 7 or 8. The only reason that I wouldn't give him anything higher, despite the fact it was a free transfer, is right now there is competition at that spot. I mentioned the likes of Alfonso Davies. We'll talk about him in a bit, but Mazzarelli's also there, so he's not going to be a surefire starter. But depending on how things go, he might very well slot into the team. And he can play wing as well. He's not just a left back. I've also seen him play centrally for Portugal. So Guerrero's versatility is going to be huge. I don't think he'll be a surefire starter for Bayern just because there is so much quality in that team. But that being said, I do think he's going to be a good signing.
I'll agree on that. I don't think anyone rarely deserves a 10 right off the rip. You have to prove yourself. We've seen players who should have been the greatest, like Hazard going to Madrid. He should have been a lot better.
Let's not talk about that one.
But of course, it didn't work out, and that happens. So you don't want to jump the gun on that. I would hope that eventually he turns into a 10 out of 10 signing. And like I said with Guerrero, that makes sense. I do think that even if it's not this year, then the next year, then Davies may leave. So whether it's this year or next year, I think the signing of Guerrero will eventually grow closer to a 9 as far as rating goes.
Yeah, I think the only one I've given a solid 10 to so far is Jude. I just don't see how he fails. I really don't. Even if he doesn't play that much this year, he's going to be a stud. But from guys into Bayern to guys leaving Bayern, we're going to go into a couple of signings that PSG have made. The first one being Lucas Hernandez. I personally think that this one is a good signing for PSG. Ramos is most likely leaving, as well as the fact that PSG's defense as a whole hasn't been great. Now, it's not a Spanish team, so Hernandez doesn't really have to worry about that regard too much. France is his country of choice, so I do think it's a good signing for PSG. He can play both left back and center back. I think he's going to be a surefire starter. I'm going to give it a 9.
Yeah, I think the only thing that stops us from being a 10 really is his injury history. I think he was one of the best defenders that Bayern's had in the last few years. Just because he was so good, and they had that long streak where whenever he started, they actually didn't lose, which you just kind of have to give him credit for that. But he did get injured a lot, whether it was for France or for Bayern. He was missing a lot, and this season you could tell that they were missing him. Especially there was a lot of defensive mistakes. But it was an expensive signing back then. I think it was about 80 million, and this one is about 40 to 50 going to PSG. So you are losing a little bit from him, but he contributed a lot to Bayern, and I think he's going to do the same for PSG as best as he can.
Yeah, I think he'll be a good signing. I expect him to play more left back for them, since currently I think the guy that's been playing left back for them a lot has been Nuno Mendes, who isn't bad in his own regard, but he's not Lucas Hernandez. And the reason I say that is because they also signed center back Milan Skriniar from Inter Milan. And this guy's been a rock at that team for a very long time. I expect him to start alongside Marquinhos in that back line. And I think that both signings really bolster PSG's defense, especially since they are losing a lot of attacking quality, losing Messi and potentially losing Neymar as well. So I would say that both signings are really good. I'm going to give Skriniar a 9 as well, especially since he's on a free. Getting a player of that regard and that stature on a free is huge. And then you got Hakimi at the right back spot. So I think PSG are going to be pretty good defensively next season. I expect a lot of fewer errors for their side.
Yeah, as far as what they need, especially with Ramos leaving, I think Skriniar is a proven center back. Much like him and Jay, he was one of the best defenders in the Serie A over his career there in the last few years. And a free transfer that's really always good in any case. So much like Bayern, they're bolstering their defense, and you have a couple players who have great versatility. So I really don't think they can go wrong with this. Even though PSG does tend to find a way to mess things up, so we'll see how that goes.
That they do. That they do. So I think it'll be a good signing. I mean, Inter Milan aren't going to be feeling it too much though, because they still have the likes of Bastoni who are really good, and the experienced legs of Francesco Acerbi as well. So there's still defenders there in that team. So not the worst thing for them. And then they also have De Vrij, so lots of center backs, even if they play a back three. So we're going to move on to a transfer that personally I felt a lot. One that I was pretty sad when I saw this one, and that is the fact that Ilkay Gundogan has gone from Manchester City to Barcelona on a free. Great signing for Barcelona, but this one hurts if you're a City fan.
Yeah, as a German national team supporter, I've always liked following him a little bit. He's kind of like one of those players that's kind of on the down low. He doesn't get all the recognition that he deserves, unless, of course, it's at the end of the season and in championship games. That tends to be his thing. But with the story of him being Pep's first signing at City and then ending up winning everything at club level with them, uh, as far as most players agree with this, once you complete things at club level, unless this is your boyhood club, you tend to leave, chase new challenges, which is nothing new. This happens all the time. And I think he should be much appreciated at Barca. And with a partnership between him passing up to Lou, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, Gundogan I don't think got the recognition he deserved because of the other central midfielder in Man City's team being Kevin De Bruyne. I think if Gundogan was the only great passer in that team, I think he would have gotten a lot of recognition. But the fact that KDB is in that team, and then you also got the likes of Rodri, Foden, Grealish, Mara, like there's always guys in that team that have just kind of overshadowed him. But Gundogan has done his job since he's been in City's team. His passing's immaculate. He was the captain. He was the leader. He was the guy that brought them to the Champions League final. He won the City the FA Cup in the final single handedly. Gundogan is a phenomenal player. He's 32 now, so he's starting to get up there in age. But I mean, Barcelona could do a lot worse, especially if they manage to keep Frankie De Jong this season, which I fully expect that they will do. It's going to be a great midfield with the likes of them and Pedri and Gavi. Even though I personally think Gavi's a smidge overrated, but he is young still, and I'm not going to be too harsh on him. But regardless, it's a very good midfield. Barcelona still could probably use a CDM to replace Sergio Busquets, who is now going to Miami. But outside of that, their midfield is going to be pretty set next season. I still don't think it's the level that Madrid's is. I think Madrid's midfield is absolutely insane. The fact that there's just the 5 or 6 options for them in their midfield, but Barcelona's going to have a good midfield. They currently have a way better striker than Madrid have, so it's quite possible that they make a good run in for the league again next year, and potentially, I doubt it, but potentially even the UCL.
Yeah, I think as far as Madrid goes, not that they were exactly the topic of this, but if they want to make that push, then they're gonna have to get someone better at striker, especially when you have Louis on the opposite side at Barca, who just won the Golden Boot for Spain. So he's obviously going to continue doing what he does. So if Madrid wants to be the contender that they should be, not saying it has to be Mbappe, but it should be someone a little bit better than Joselu. So hopefully, there's a long window. Hopefully that happens.
Yeah. Well, from one team in Spain to another, the next transfer we're going to talk about is Chelsea center back slash right back Cesar Azpilicueta, who is also their captain, aka Dave, is going to Atletico Madrid. He is a free signing. I'm going to give it about a 7. I would give Gundogan a solid 8 or 9 on Barca's front, but I'll give Azpilicueta like a 7. He's experienced. He's a good player. He's going back to his home country of Spain, but I don't think he has the quite the edge he used to. I don't think he's quite as good as he once was, but still a serviceable signing for a decent Atletico Madrid team, one that thrives in defending. So I think he'll be okay.
This is one I want to rate highlight just because I got a high five from him at the Chelsea Reds game all those years ago. That's basically that. But he's definitely a lot older than he is in his prime when he was at Chelsea. He did great things for them as their captain for so many years. It's an interesting move that I don't know how to feel about. I'm not sure. Uh, I know with Atletico they love to park the bus, and it's a defensive team, so strengthening the defense is something that they just always will do as long as Simeone is there. Assuming he's going to be the coach for a while, and that's the game plan that they'll continue to follow. I think it fits right in with their identity. So it's not a groundbreaking signing, but it's definitely not a bad one.
No, that's kind of why I gave it a 7. I mean, it's not something that's going to blow everyone out of the water, but it's a serviceable player. It's a player that can definitely help them. So I think he'll be all right. Nothing too much more to say about that one. The next one, and this is a very big transfer. This one's going to excite a lot of people, and that is the fact that Dominik Szoboszlai, definitely going to have to work in the pronunciation there, is going to Liverpool on about a $70 million deal. So this is a pretty big one. I personally think that this one is very good. I'm going to give it like an 8. For the sole reason that wouldn't be a little higher is I don't know where he's going to play. He can play attacking midfielder or wing, but wing they're pretty set with the likes of Luis Diaz and Mo Salah, and even the likes of Darwin Nunez and Cody Gakpo can play wing as well. But also, their midfield is now looking a little better with the likes of McAllister in there. They're looking most likely to get Thuram, and also they still have the likes of Fabinho, who I expect to have a rebound season. So I think it's a good signing. Soboslai is a very talented player. I saw him play for RB Leipzig. But the one question I have is, where is he going to play?
I think this is going to be one that they might have to rework the formation a bit from what they're used to. I think he should run the midfield as far as Cam goes. He's one of those players that I feel like in the Bundesliga is going to be really unappreciated. Um, but as soon as he moves to Liverpool, I said this the other day in the group chat, they're gonna foam at the mouth over this guy because he really is that good, and he didn't get all the recognition that he deserves in the past. But I think people now are really starting to realize that he is one of Hungary's best right now. That's without a doubt. And he has a lot to bring. He has a lot to offer to this team. I think attacking midfielder is where they might have to slot him. I think they should rework the formation around him, make him comfortable. Whether that means sacrificing a few to the bench or whatever the case may be. Especially when you make a signing of this caliber with that amount of money, you probably should cater to it a little bit. And it's not bad to try new things. I know Klopp is very successful and he knows what he's doing, but based on the last season's how it went compared to past seasons, I think it might be time to start looking at some new formations and tactics. So hopefully they use him to his full potential.
I think they will. I I would expect them to play him at Cam as well. I think he'll kind of play that Coutinho role that Coutinho did a long time ago before he transferred to Barcelona. I do think he's a quality player, and there's a good chance that it'll happen for him. And he did something very bold today, and that is he chose the number 8 to wear. No one at Liverpool has worn that number since Steven Gerrard did, and it's clearly one that he likes Gerrard as a whole as a player. He said he looked up to him when he was younger, especially in the Champions League, but also that he rates himself high enough to wear the shirt. So for that, I say good for him. Hopefully, he doesn't burn the bridge there with Liverpool fans by choosing that number. But I think he'll be a good signing. I think he'll be worth it. I think he'll prove that he deserves to wear the number 8, and I think he'll be at Liverpool for a very long time. That's the goal anyway in that regard. Now we're going to move on to a couple signings that Arsenal have made, and two of them I think are good. The other one I'm a little questionable on. The first one, Declan Rice is moving to Arsenal. I think it's a good signing. The only thing is, Declan Rice is not worth over 100 million. He is not. He's just not. That's English tax as a whole. I was saying the same thing about Grealish when he went to City. Now, obviously, he's had a good season, but even then, I still don't think he's worth 100 million that City spent for him. And I think it's the same with Rice.
Yeah, even before you mentioned Grealish, that was the first thing that popped into my mind because Grealish is great. He's really grown on me, but very few people are worth that price tag, much less midfielders, especially ones that kind of go box to box, whatever the case may be. I think signings of that price tag really have to discriminate and are reserved for attacking players who bring the goals. Holland and Mbappe should be people like that, even though Holland did not get that price tag. Um, Without the price tag in mind, I think this is a fantastic signing. Of course, the overexpenditure of money on this one kind of brings it down as far as whatever the rating may be. But I think overall, um, he's going to change this midfield, and I think the partnership that he'll have with Odegaard as he runs the midfield, this will be a revamped Arsenal team, and they'll keep pushing for top four, and I think they'll be able to get that again.
Yeah, if they do keep hold of Thomas Partey, I do think that it'll be him and Rice starting in that midfield too, kind of holding down the fort while Odegaard brings the ball forward. If they don't keep hold of Partey, I see Odegaard dropping a bit deeper to make way for Kai Havertz, who they did just sign as well. Now I'm going to give Rice about a 7. I think the price tag really does bring it down a little bit. I think he'll be a good player. I think he'll be better than Xhaka was for Arsenal, but that number is just way too big for me. As for Kai Havertz, I think how I'm going to rate him really depends on if Thomas Partey stays, because if Thomas stays, Thomas is going to start. If he doesn't, then I think Havertz is the guy that does replace him in the team. Now, I'm questioning Chelsea on this one because Havertz has been one of their best players across the last few years. He did win them the Champions League with his winning goal. I think that he got screwed because he was playing as a number 9 when he has said himself he's not a number 9. Havertz is more of an attacking mid slash wing. Now, the only place where I really see him getting into Arsenal's team is at attacking mid because he's not getting in there over Saka or Martinelli. He's just not. And I don't think he's going to play number 9. I think that belongs to Jesus. So I see him playing as a 10.
Um, Even though I feel it would be disrespectful towards him because I like him a lot, especially as a German national team supporter, I think this may be Arsenal trying to make up for the fact that last season they really crumbled due to the lack of squad depth and with injuries and whatnot down the stretch of the season. I don't think it would be right to call Havertz just a squad depth investment and just a bench player to sub in at the 60. I think he should start. Um, but like you said, it's very questionable as to where he goes. I know as far as Chelsea goes, they're doing a whole revamp, and he kind of alluded to it himself that he did not want to leave, and they kind of forced his hand there. So maybe going to Arsenal is his way of getting back at them. Who knows? Um, I think it could be a good signing, but as of right now, I'm skeptical just because I'm not sure where he fits into this team.
Yeah, and as I said, I think 2 are good and 1 I'm a little bit iffy on. The one I'm iffy on is Kai Havertz. I'm going to give it about a 5 right now. I really do think that if he doesn't play, it's going to be a bit iffy since he did cost over 65 million. I do think that he's got class, he's got quality, but until that question's answered, I have to be skeptical about this one. I have to really question where he's going to fit in this team because spending 65 mil for a depth signing doesn't really cut it in my book. I think it's too much. It's too much for a depth signing. The type of money you want to spend on a depth signing is what they did for Trossard last year, which I thought was a great buy. So I think Havertz is a bit up in the air. The last signing that Arsenal are making, though, and this one I think is really good, is Jurrien Timber. Great Dutch defender. I think he'll fit into this team perfectly alongside Saliba slash Gabriel. He'll definitely challenge both of them. With the likes of Saliba being injured last season, that really hurt Arsenal. Timber is going to provide a lot of quality if one of those guys needs a rest. It is more of a depth signing, I would say, right now, since I do think that Gabriel and Saliba is going to be the starting two. But less than 50 million, he's still pretty young. You can make the same argument for Havertz, but defenses where Arsenal has needed the depth, and I think that this signing solves a lot of their problems.
I think early on he'll solidify himself as a starter. I think this is a fantastic signing. Whether it's injuries or not with the other two, I think he can prove himself to be good enough to start over either one of them. And worst case, they rotate between the three. At the end of the day, though, I think he will, by mid-season, be the clear-cut starter on one of them. Depending on who goes to the bench between Saliba and Gabriel, that's up to them and how they play. But I think Timber has the potential to be the starter there, at least on one of the sides.
Yeah, I think it would be over Gabriel since Saliba has been. I mean, Arsenal looked a completely different team when Saliba played last year. He was easily their best defender. So I think it'll be good for competition in the squad too, because they also have the likes of Ben White, but I think he'll play more right back, which he's actually done very well in. So, and then you got Tomiyasu as well. So there are guys in there. Arsenal does have a bit of depth in their defense now. This signing solves a lot of problems. It means that Rob Holding won't see as much of the field, which I think every Arsenal fan in the world is going to cheer about that. So I think this is a great buy. I'm going to give it like a solid 8 or 9 on that one. Now the next one, again, I don't give many tens, but for the team that bought this guy, this one is going to be very close to a 10 for me, and that is the fact that Aston Villa of all teams have signed Pau Torres from Villarreal. This guy was linked with every big team like 2 years ago, and now he's going to Aston Villa, which, I mean, good for them. I think this is just Unai working his magic to sign one of his former players. But I mean, for a team like Aston Villa, this is a very big signing of intent. This proves to me that they have a lot of ambition in what they think they can do. They think they can win the Conference League by signing a guy like this, a guy who has won the Europa League. So, I mean, this one's like a solid 9.5 for me. I think that he is a very good central defender. He'll slide along the likes of Ezri Konza, or if he does come back, Diego Carlos even. Tyrone Mings is going to be looking at this and being like, oh, damn, I might be screwed here. But Pau Torres, fantastic buy for Aston Villa, in my opinion.
Like you alluded to before, one of the big teams that he was linked with was Bayern this year. They actually want to secure him before they ended up going with Kim and Jay. And he is also one of the defenders that locked down Bayern a couple years ago in the Champions League when they knocked them out. So this is really, I mean, you show your class against teams in Spain consistently at Villarreal, and you show your class against European giants in the Champions League like Bayern and whoever else they faced that season. I think for what Aston Villa are trying to do, Conference League, this is 11 out of 10 signing because a lot of the teams in the Conference League aren't that great. It's unfortunate to say, but it's the truth. He'll with ease be able to lock down most of the attack that many of the teams there have to offer until it gets to the later stages. And then you'll actually see, what he's made of and what they're made of as a team. I think they might plan on pushing for a top 7 finish again, just to secure another European spot. I think that this is a great start. They have a good team, but I think overall you might want to grab another player or two. But this is definitely a damn good start.
Oh, for sure. And they also did sign Yuri Tielemans on a free from Leicester. So that's another signing. I mean, he played awful last year. He was not good for Leicester, but there's definitely still a player in there. I really rate Yuri Tielemans. I've always thought he's really good. Just Leicester as a whole weren't great. He wasn't great. I think he had trouble getting motivated, but I think Unai will find a way to make the best of him. And yeah, as for Torres, I mean, this is one of the best signings that Aston Villa has ever made, in my opinion. Carlos last year was a good signing, but then he just got injured for the whole season. Believe he tore his Achilles. If he comes back and plays like he did at Sevilla, I mean, that's going to be a scary center back duo. I mean, two guys that were very good in Spain, two guys that have played for top teams in Spain, teams that have won trophies. I mean, I think the sky's the limit for Aston Villa. I think they'll definitely get a top 10 finish again, and I don't think the top 7 is completely out of reach. I think they're going to definitely challenge the likes of Man United, Newcastle, and even maybe the likes of Liverpool, depending on how they fare this season. So I think this is a great signing for Villa, and I think it's a big signing of intent. And speaking of Newcastle, one signing that we actually didn't mark in our document here, but we have to talk about Sandro Tonali. I mean, this is something that I probably should have seen coming due to Newcastle's ability to spend now, but this is, in my opinion, the biggest signing that this team has ever made. I mean, Tonali is a phenomenal buy for them. He's a guy that everyone thought was going to be at AC Milan forever, but due to their current state of affairs, can't really fault him for leaving. But I mean, Newcastle just got a lot better with this player. He's going to play defensive midfield for them, in my would be my guess, and he'll be able to link up with the likes of Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton, and that is a very good sight if you're a Newcastle fan.
Yeah, I think with the issues, removing Paolo Maldini from the office as far as AC Milan goes, a lot of players were outspoken. I know right before that happened, Rafael Leao re-signed a contract, and as soon as that happened, he was visibly upset, and he kind of made note of that on social media. As far as Sandro Tonali goes, it's a fantastic signing, and I think this has the potential to be a 10 out of 10. We'll call it a 9 for now. I think Newcastle last year was, despite a couple big signings, I think it was a lot of a passion project last season. They didn't use the things that they could uh, to the fullest extent, like they are probably about to start doing now. And they, performed phenomenally. They got top 4 when no one even considered them to be top 10. Um,
I had them
at,
top 10.
at least yet until they started signing some people. It was definitely like a mid-table team, but they surprised everyone. You can clearly see the quality in their team now. And now adding Tonali, it's going to be tough to get past that midfield, and I'm pretty excited for how they fare this season.
Yeah, and if Isak can stay fit this season, I wouldn't put it past them to challenge for second. I I really do think they might be a defender away. So obviously, the likes of Fabian Schär played a lot last year, and he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but he's nowhere near Botman, his partner in defense. And also, I think they could use a left back. No knock to Dan Burn. I think he played phenomenally there, but Dan Burn is not going to be your starting left back if you're really trying to challenge for a big spot in the Champions League. But Tonali is going to be playing Champions League football for them. I think he'll be a signing that really does carry their midfield to an even greater extent, like kind of like Bruno Guimaraes has been doing since he went there. But this is exciting for Newcastle, and yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 9 as well, but with the potential of being a 10 easily. It costs about 70 million, so not a cheap buy, but a buy I think is going to be great for the future since he is still also very young. And yeah, but moving on to one that I thought was a decent buy, but one that I wasn't really expecting, and that is the fact that James Maddison has gone to Spurs. I think this is a good buy for Tottenham. He was easily Leicester's best player last year in a very dismal season for them, but he has the ability to replace a guy like Harry Winks, and I think he'll be the good the good signing that they've needed their midfield to have. He's got a good passing ability. He can take a free kick any day of the week, and he can also score. I think Madison's a great buy for Tottenham. I'm going to give it about an 8.
I think we're going to see a lot of this throughout the window, with Leicester dumping most of their uh, world class. I use that lately. Players, like Tillman's leaving as well. When you get relegated and you have players who are used to being top 10, they're not really going to stand for that, and they're going to want more. Spurs is definitely an interesting choice considering their finish this season. I know they're typically a top five team, although they fell dismally short as far as their standards go this year. But I think this is actually a player that can bring a lot of class to them. Whether or not Kane stays, which we'll talk about later, either it adds more squad depth or it fills the hole that he may leave, whether he decides to depart or not. So I think this is definitely upper echelon type of signing, and I think it'll fare well. Fare well for them.
Yeah, I think it will too. And Tottenham's season is really going to depend on if Kane stays or goes, because he is that team. He just is. So I think their season really does depend on him. If he does leave, I think their challenge for top 7 is a fair goal for Tottenham. I think Aston Villa has more ambition than they do right now, but I don't know much about Ange Postecoglou. We'll see how he fares as a manager in the Premier League. He did well with Celtic, so I'm not going to count him out. But Tottenham season really does hang on Harry Kane, but James Madison's a good start for Postecoglou, and I think it does definitely revamp their midfield a bit. So I'm going to give it about an 8. He was about 40 million. We have a couple more signings to talk about, and then a few rumors. The first of the two signings is Mason Mount going to Manchester United. Really, the first signing Man U's made this summer. They've dumped a lot of guys, even the likes of Phil Jones, who's been there forever somehow. I do think Mason Mount's a great signing. I think he'll bolster their midfield a bit. He gives them some depth along the likes of Eriksen and Bruno, as well as Casemiro. I think he'll definitely play. I think he's going to be a starter. He costs about 60 million, so big money for a good player. And another player that Chelsea have decided to throw out the window.
Yeah, as far as Chelsea goes, this is kind of upsetting because the last few years they've had a lot of academy players or youngsters that they signed for in high hopes for their potential. The whole identity of the team has changed. They're dumping most of their Champions League winning players. Whether I think there's only two or three
Two,
players from that
two.
starting team that are left, and one of them being Reece James, who I think he stated that he's not leaving. He doesn't plan on it. Um, but it is kind of sad to see. However, I think Mount kind of deserves better than what he was getting at Chelsea the last couple of years. And I think United is a good chance for him. I'm actually very excited to see how this midfield plays. I think he'll be a lot better than people are going to give him credit for, whether it's because it's a new environment or they play him in a different way. I think Mason Mount will have a much better season than people are projecting just based on how he's been in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, out of the Champions League team, they have I said 2, but it is actually 3. Then the 3 are Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell, and Reece James. I just forgot about Ben Chilwell. He hasn't really done much for Chelsea last year, but except get sent off against Madrid. But I do think that Mount is going to be a great signing for United. I think it's a good buy. I'm going to give it about a 7 because I do have a bit of hesitancy about if he's going to start right away or how he'll fare with the likes of Eriksen also being in the team. But I do think that it'll be good. I don't really think that United fans will be complaining about this one. I think they'll actually quite enjoy this signing. So I'm going to give it a solid 7 and go from there. And then the final signing that we're going to talk about today is Marcelo Brozovic going to Al Nasser to link up with Hakim Ziyech and Cristiano Ronaldo. Honestly, out of the guys that have gone to the Saudi League, obviously the likes of Jota from Celtic are being linked there right now. So don't really know how I feel about that one. But Brozovic is past 30. I think he's about the type of player that the Saudi League wants. So I would say it's a good signing for Al Nasser, about 23 million going to Inter Milan. And yeah, I would say it's a good signing for them for Al Nassr. I mean, he'll link up with Ziyech and Ronaldo. They now have a guy to pass them the ball.
As someone, and I know this is the case with a lot of people who are used to European football, I have no idea what these teams are really playing for, besides the league. Um, it
There's the
mostly
Asian Champions League.
it's mostly money, of course. I mean, because that doesn't hold the prestige that um, European League trophies and European trophies have. I don't think it's the craziest move ever. I think for them it'll be fantastic because he is still very quality, and I think he could bring a lot of value to that team. But with all the signings that are going to the Saudi League, I have so much skepticism. I'm never jumping to validate it until I see what comes of it. I don't think most of them are great ideas. Most of them were definitely money grabs, but I don't know if I can call that a money grab for this one. I'm just gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah, this one's the type of player that I think could have gone there anyway. It kind of reminds me of when the likes of Xavi, who were old at the time, went to Qatar to play. I think this signing could have happened even without the likes of Ronaldo or Ziyech being there. But it's a good signing for for Al Nassr to link up with their big guns there. I do think that the expansion of the Club World Cup is going to make the Saudi League more relevant since I don't think it'll be a guaranteed European victory every season. So that could be part of it. That could be one thing that they play for, especially since they have announced that it will be 32 teams in the US for, I want to say, 2025. So that could be part of it. But as for the signing goes, I mean, I think Brozovic is going to be quality in Al Nassr, so I'll give it an 8. Probably still won't get me to watch the league much, but it's a good signing. It's a good signing. Well, moving on from some transfers to some rumors, we have three big ones that we're mostly going to talk about right now. And the first one being Christian Pulisic to AC Milan. This is the smallest rumor of the three we're about to talk about. And I say smallest just because of the player. And now Pulisic's a good player, don't get me wrong, but comparative to the other two we're about to talk about, I would say that this should happen. I think AC Milan is a great destination for him. He really needs to leave Chelsea. He overall hasn't been great since he's gone there. He won the Champions League, of course, but outside of that, eh, he's been okay. I would say that Pulisic should go to AC Milan, and I think it would. I think he will. I would say the signs point to yes.
Yeah, but they're dumping all the players, like I already said, so I'm not gonna be surprised. I think at this point it's just in terms of agreeing upon how much money. Besides that, I think it's all but definitive, and I think we'll probably hear about that in the coming days. But I don't think there's much doubt on this one at all.
Yeah, and there are a lot of Americans going to Italy. Tim Weah just went there,
Hmm.
as well as the fact that Weston McKennie is already there as well. So there are Americans in Serie A, but I do think that Pulisic definitely should go to Milan. The next rumor is Harry Kane. Will he stay? Will he go? We don't know. I think he should leave. I've said that in the past. I think he's done everything that he possibly can for Tottenham. The only thing that I think he would make him stay in the Prem is the goals record to break Shearer's record. But outside of that, he's just not going to win anything there. He's just not. The guy needs trophies. He needs trophies. He should go to either Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. That's just plain and simple. He's been linked with both, more so Bayern. If he went there, I would be very happy for him. If he went to Madrid, I'd be very happy for him. I'd be very happy as well. But I do think that he just needs to leave Tottenham and go to a top team to win just anything. Doesn't even have to be a league title. Just Spanish Cup, German Cup. He'll take it.
Yeah, I think it's clear that he wants to go. There's been talks. Apparently, he's been agreeing to personal terms, and he likes the idea of moving. Um, and I know Bayern had already submitted their first bid, which I feel like was more of like a feeler, more than a serious bid, considering it was ridiculously low for
It
a
was like
player of that
70, I
caliber.
believe. Yeah, it was terrible.
I don't think they even expected that to work. They were just kind of feeling it out, but Tottenham did reject it immediately, um, almost right after it was made public. I think they're being really stingy with this one, trying to hope that he'll re-sign next year. I think that's really stupid. I see no way that you can convince this guy to stay unless you win the league this year. He's not staying, and I think it's just ridiculous to assume that you can get him to stay um, next year when he could leave for free. So I think the best move for Tottenham as a club is to bite the bullet, take the money from whatever team decides to bid on him, and then you can avoid him leaving for free the next year and ending up with the same result.
Yeah, as obviously we talked about the English tax with Declan Rice. If there's one player in the Prem that is worth 100 million that is English, it's Harry Kane. It's the one player where if a team spent 100 mil for a British player, he's the one that makes sense. The only other one back in the day was Gareth Bale. Now obviously he's Welsh, but he was worth the money for Madrid. I mean, Bale was one of their best players when he went there. You know, for that period of about 5 years, Bale was insane. Like he was top class for them. Kane is the same thing. Kane, obviously, he's 29, but he's worth the money. He's worth the money. He is the one of the best strikers that the league's ever seen, if not the best striker the league has ever seen since the Premier League came into its current form in 1992. Kane's been that guy, and he's done it for Tottenham. Imagine if Kane played for Man City. I mean, he would have broken Shearer's record by now. He would have scored 30 goals every season in that team. But he absolutely has to leave. Yeah, I really hope he does. And yeah, it would be for his best interest if he left Tottenham. But yeah, don't really need to say much more about that we haven't already. The final rumor now, and this one would make you cry and make me very happy, and that's the fact that Alphonso Davies is being linked with the Royal Whites, Real Madrid. I would say right now this one's probably about 50-50. Davies' agent has talked about it a little bit. I believe he said that they have contacted him, but nothing has become too concrete yet. But I mean, you would see Davies move for easily 70 to 80 million plus. I mean, he's he's got the ability to play either left back or wing for Madrid. I think they would start him at left back because he's a better left back than Camavinga is. Camavinga is a great player, but he's more of a central midfielder. But also, he's got that ability to play as a foil to Vinicius, which, I mean, having Vinicius and Alphonso Davies run at you on the left is just the thought of that for an opposing team is just terrifying. If one doesn't get by you, the other one will. Like that is something that is horrifying if you're a European team. I really hope this happens. I would love Alphonso Davies to be the first Canadian to ever play for Madrid and be one of the first North Americans to ever play for Madrid. Obviously, the likes of Suarez back in the day played from Mexico, but Davies playing there would be huge. It would be huge for CONCACAF, huge for North American soccer as a whole, and I think that this move would be just age defining for Canada.
I think under current circumstances, I would not be super upset about this. He's won everything at club level for Bayern. He's done a great deal for us. Um, he's just been amazing. With the signing of Guerrero, I don't think it would be horrible if you left because at least you can kind of fill the void with someone who can play at the left wing back or left back, whatever the case may be. I think if you're Bayern, you might want to capitalize on this. Again, he's served his purpose. He's done amazing. He is expensive, and you might want to capitalize on the funds. You can put that towards Harry Kane if it went through soon enough. But I think overall it would be a good move for both of them because again, with the signing of Guerrero, you don't want like a clash of interest as far as who's going to start, where they're going to start. And I think Alfonso himself may have bigger dreams now that he's won everything there is to win at Bayern. And let's face it, unless you're a Barca ultra, everyone wants to play for Madrid. That's just kind of how it works. Almost everyone's boyhood club is supporting club is Madrid. So I think for everyone involved, even Bayern, this would be a decent move if they get this done this window while he's not free.
Yeah, I think he should move as well. Obviously, I'm a little biased in that regard, but it just makes sense. It's a transfer that makes sense. The one thing Madrid needs is a left back, and Davies is arguably the best left back in the world. I mean, outside of the likes of Andy Robertson, and if Cancelo plays left back, which he's going to get sold somewhere too, so that's also an option. But Davies is the guy. I mean, that's you're not going to get a guy better than that. So I think Madrid should throw a bunch of money at him. They've said that they're not going to sign anyone else, which I think everyone in the world knows is complete BS. That Perez is just playing his games that he usually does. But I think they're going to make a run for Davies, and I believe they're going to make a run for Mbappe. I think now, are they going to go to Madrid? We'll see. But I think there's a chance that both come off. And if both came off, Madrid's my favorite for the Champions League next year. I mean, Vinicius, Mbappe, Rodrigo, with Modric, Cruz, Tchouameni, or Bellingham behind them. I mean, that's terrifying. And then you got Courtois in goal, Davies at left back, a good center back duo of Militao and Rudiger. I mean, it's a good thing. Um, Poor old Captain Nacho Fernandez is probably going to barely get in the team, but it is what it is. But if this happened, I'd be all for it. But that'll do it for our transfer talk. Obviously, that's going to be the majority of this episode. We have a couple more things to talk about, and then we will uh, summarize it for you. But we're going to take a close look at the Gold Cup right now. We're really just going to talk about the big three. We'll start with Mexico because there isn't really much to talk about. They dominated Honduras the other day. They won a comfortable 4-0 game, and they beat Haiti as well, 2-0. So Mexico have looked good in this tournament so far, but they haven't faced the likes of the U.S. or Canada. The one thing I will say about them is that they did bring most of their team comparative to the other two aforementioned bigger teams in CONCACAF. Mexico could be a favorite. I think the U.S. would still beat them, but we'll see what happens in that regard. But they are the first team that is through to the knockout stages of the Gold Cup.
Yeah, if I said this with the World Cup, for certain teams, if or rather with the Champions League, if it was a tournament that was played, within a very small window of time, then a team like the U.S., who is in amazing form, would win it 10 times out of 10. With how they currently are, they're just playing so well. Of course, some of the teams that they've been playing so far in the Gold Cup have been nobodies. But I think down the line, when they get to the later stages, like they've proven in the last tournament, they can beat Canada, they can beat Mexico. Um, it's just it's exciting to look forward to what the U.S. has to offer in a few years, especially with Copa America, them being involved this time, and the World Cup. I think um, they're getting the best kind of practice that they can get, and that's just experience.
Yeah, well, you say nobodies. I mean, they did beat St. Kitts 6-0, but the other team they played was Jamaica. Now, normally Jamaica, you'd be like, okay, they're a decent team, but if you look at Jamaica's roster, there's a lot of guys in that team that are really good. Leon Bailey's there, Aston Villa player. Michael Antonio, who is English, yes, but declared for Jamaica, he's there. Damare Gray is there. Bobby Decordova-Reid for Fulham, he's there. I mean, those are four guys that all consistently play in the Premier League. I mean, Jamaica's not bad. They have a decent defense. Their center back Damian Lowe, who plays in MLS, scored against the U.S. The U.S. almost didn't beat Jamaica. They were very close to not beating Jamaica. Jamaica is actually, and this might sound ridiculous, but they're my favorite to win the Gold Cup just because of those guys that I just mentioned. I think that those guys are good enough to take this team to the final and maybe even win the thing. I would put that Jamaica team over Canada right now. I mean, Canada suck. I mean, and the U.S. showed some signs of weakness against Jamaica. But the likes of Bailey, Decordova-Reid, Antonio, and Gray are just that good that I just think that there's a good chance that they could do something here. There's 6 Premier League players in their team. Jamaica brought their full-fledged roster, and because of that, I mean, I think that they have a great shot at doing something in this tournament. They made it in the past with teams far worse. They made the final twice, losing to the U.S. and Mexico, respectively. Jamaica's got a chance. I'm not going to count them out. I'm not going to count them out at all. But as for the U.S., they had a convincing win over St. Kitts. I mean, you hadn't even heard of St. Kitts before that. But I have been there. It's a very, very beautiful island. But yeah, I mean, it's St. Kitts. You should beat St. Kitts 6-0. So the U.S. have a chance. I think that they're alongside Jamaica, my favorites to win. I think that they would beat Mexico. But as for Canada,
Moment of silence.
I don't think I've ever been so disappointed. And I've been supporting the New England Revolution for my whole life. I don't think I've ever been so disappointed in a team as Canada. Drawing Guatemala is one thing. Guatemala is a decent footballing nation. But they drew Guadalupe. Guadalupe is not even a FIFA recognized member. They're a tiny island that is funded by France. Like, how? How are they drawing Canada? You're supposed to be the top 3 team in CONCACAF, and you're drawing a team that isn't even an independent nation. Like, how is that possible? There were 2 own goals in this game, one for each team. Guadalupe tied on a late own goal from Jason Russell-Rowe, who, it was a very unfortunate touch. I'm not going to flog him too much for that. But Steven Vittoria, who is a surefire starter for Canada, had the worst game I've ever seen him play in a Canada jersey on the first game against Guadalupe. I mean, he was awful. I mean, he started against Guatemala and they kept a shutout, so I don't know. I mean, whatever. But he got turned inside out by the striker for Guadalupe, former Man City player, Ambrose, I believe is his name. It's just it's a nation that should be better right now, and I'm currently questioning the tactics of their coach John Herdman. I really am. It's infuriating to watch. That performance filled me with rage. I almost turned into young Kippa. It was that bad.
I'm more concerned with the fact that 2 teams in this tournament have just copied France's flag and are just rolling with it. As far as Guadalupe and Martinico, I'm looking at these flags right now, and it's just France. It's just France. I don't know if you've seen these, but that's just
I have. They're both French territories. They're not recognized FIFA members.
It's just straight up France. Anyway, yeah. So I think the U.S. overall will probably win this tournament if they keep their form. More so referring to St. Kitts as random, just because, like I told you, I don't think they're real. I think this is just a made up thing. Like I thought.
Take a cruise down there, man.
But no, Jamaica. I wasn't really referring to them. More so St. Kitts. But regardless, I think the U.S. as far as odds would go are the odds-on favorite. But we shall see.
Yeah, I'm still putting Jamaica at number 1 right now. I mean, with the guys that are in that team, I mean, they have a legit shot. I'm not going to count them out. Their defense is a little suspect, but I mean, them going forward, I mean, you can't, for CONCACAF, you can't get much better than those guys. I mean, Mikel Antonio just won the Conference League. Damari Gray and Leon Bailey are both quality. So, and then Deco Rivereed's a decent player. So there's guys in there. But yeah, that does it for the Gold Cup for me. I just Canada and as a whole are just a mess right now. But we're going to talk about one MLS game, and that was last night. The New England Revolution went to Cincinnati and took a point. And now normally, that might not be a big thing, but for 2 reasons it is. The first, Cincinnati's the best team in MLS right now. They're way ahead of everyone else. They're about 7 points above New England, who is actually second. But also, Cincinnati was 10-0-0 at home this year, and the Revolution are the first team to make them drop points at home, which is insane. They're still unbeaten at home. They're still 10-1-0 at home, but the Revolution stole a point from a venue that hasn't had any points stolen from it this year. So that in itself is very impressive. So great result for the Revs. Super happy about that. And they're looking good. They're starting to look good.
Yeah, I think this league is going to turn upside down when Messi starts playing.
We'll see.
So we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah, Tata Martino did just get hired by Miami, so they're definitely going to have a better coach than what they've had in the past. Um,
That's
but
Inter Barcelona now.
pretty much, yeah, I'll talk about that with someone I'm hoping to get in the show soon. So we'll see what happens in that regard. I'm still working out the details there, but the final thing I wanted to touch upon. So we're not going to do our usual segment since there haven't been as many games played, but if I had to pick a goal, it would be the one that there was a New York City goal the other day. It was a beautiful scissor kick. But I'm just going to talk about my idiot of the week here. And obviously, I already touched upon the Canadian national team being in shambles, but not only is the team in shambles, but their federation's in shambles too. They're talking about potentially going into bankruptcy depending on how things go. That puts so much pressure on the women to win the World Cup. If they don't, I don't know what happens. Like their federation is a joke apparently, and the fact that that's happened is ridiculous. How do you let that happen? You just made your first World Cup in 36 years. You had a good showing in the Gold Cup. You had a good showing in the Nations League. Like your women's team is one of the best in the world. They won the Olympics in 21, which was a monumental achievement for them, beating the US. And now you're filing for bankruptcy potentially? What are you doing? Like, I feel like Taylor Twellman right now. What are we doing? Like, how does that happen? I don't know how that happens. I really don't. It's frustrating as a Canada fan. If you're a dual national looking at this, a guy like Luca Koleosho or Daniel Jebison, who have both been linked with us, I don't know what you do, like what you're doing in those regards. You want to get those guys in the team. Daniel Jebison is going to probably start for Sheffield United. He's been linked with a lot of bigger teams. This is a guy you don't want to lose to England. But with the way things are going, we could. And Koleosho's linked with he's got like 5 different options for national teams. He just scored a goal for Espanyol in La Liga before they got relegated. I mean, these are 2 guys that we need. And the Canadian Soccer Federation making a complete mockery of themselves isn't going to help that. So I hope for the best in their regard, but I am not hopeful.
As someone who doesn't really follow the Canadian Federation or the team, just besides Alfonso, I think you hit that one on the head. I got nothing really to add to that. So hopefully you're not going to be crying in the coming weeks and they figure this out.
I really hope not.
Let's see.
Yeah, but that does it for my ranting for the day. So just to wrap up here, we talked a lot about the transfer business in the market. We talked a lot about big signings ranging from the likes of Kim Min-jae to Dominik Szoboszlai, all the way to a few signings that Arsenal made, as well as Pau Torres, Mason Mount, and others. We then talked about a few rumors relating mostly to Harry Kane, Christian Pulisic, and Alphonso Davies. All 3, I think, would be good signings for the teams in question. We then looked at the Gold Cup, talked about the big 3 in that regard, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And talked one briefly about the New England Revolution, who I think are having a great season. And then I finally ranted a little bit about the Canadian Soccer Federation because they're in complete shambles right now, to my dismay. But that will do it for this week. There is going to be an interview this week with Peoria City midfielder Jonas Deckley. Keep an eye out for that. And until next time, I'm Grayson Mortimer.
Hunter Boyven.
And we'll see you soon.